Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. Mr. Charlie, apologist for American whiteness. This is part 2 of us unpacking his many lies and distortions. Now, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Now, we have been unpacking Charlie Kirk, founder and executive director of Turning Point USA, an ultra-conservative platform, a national student movement, but it's more than a student movement. Actually, Mr. Charlie has hit the big times. He is kind of partnered up with Donald Trump of Make America Great Again. Now, I labeled Mr. Charlie as apostle to white America, or apostle to white evangelicalism, or evangelical America. And he has emerged as the voice that's going to crush social justice movements, any kind of racial justice movement. And he has been crisscrossing the nation on a Save America tour. And unfortunately, or sadly, he is mostly appearing in churches, white evangelical churches. And so the segment that we have been unpacking, and this caught my attention, about a 4-minute clip. The meeting itself is about an hour and a half, but in this section where he takes aim at social justice, any kind of those that speaking out against racial justice, and how what he does is he distorts the truth and lies, outright lies, on people like Hannah Nicole of the 1619 Project. He just outright lies on Fredrick Douglas and Martin Luther King, which I'll be featuring today. What is sad is that he is having these meetings in white evangelical churches. This segment took place about a year ago in Jack Hibbs' church of Calvary Chapel of Chino Hills. Now, the Calvary Chapel movement, though disappointing, not surprising, is a worldwide movement started in 1960 by the late Chuck Smith. They are known for their verse by verse through the entire Bible teaching. And it grew. There are several mega churches under the name of Calvary Chapel. Calvary Chapel of Chino Hills is one. Jack Hibbs, even though I don't know of this particular pastor, I'm very familiar with the Calvary Chapel Church. In fact, when I'm in California, I usually attend the Calvary Chapel of Costa Mesa. So that's why I say it's disappointment when I see Calvary Chapel pastors such as Jack Hibbs paying Charlie Kirk to come and to speak and promote the American whiteness. And this is the thing that we have seen over the years. Donald Trump tapped into it, that he stirred up the American whiteness. But that's not why he won. But he won because Democrats didn't show. But I digress. But nevertheless, he did stir up that whiteness in America. Those who forgotten America, as they were calling them. And so Charlie Kirk has been on this the Cross the Nation tour, Saving America tour, in which he's peddling this apologetics of downplaying racism while glorifying actual racists. What is sad is that he is doing it in Christian churches. So we've been unpacking the lies and distortions that he is telling. And what is interesting is in this segment, he attacks Hannah Nicole. Okay, he talks about her appearances. He calls her a vile racist, but yet at the same time glorifies Thomas Jefferson. Doesn't call him a racist. Now, we talked about the two in the previous segments, and we showed how that Thomas Jefferson wrote the blueprint on how America was conditioned to think and be racist. And Charlie Kirk glorifies him by demonizing Hannah Nicole for the 1619 Project. And the reason why they do that is because they deflect from the horrors, the evilness of America. But if you have to lie to do that, you're building a faulty foundation that's going to crumble. And by the way, why do you think slavery failed? Why do you think Jim Crow failed? All right. But we talked about these two. What I want to deal with now is as he goes further and I want to deal with, again, one of the distortions that he gets into with Fredrick Douglas. I'm going to start it at clip 8 just to get bring us up to speed.
The President of the United States of our country, that 20 years, tick, 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 in the Constitution, right? They did that as a bargain with the southern states. Thomas Jefferson, on the first day he was legally able to abolish the incoming of any new slaves into the United States of America 20 years into our founding.
Now, why do I call this a distortion? Because it's a half true. In other words, it's true that Thomas Jefferson in America at this time abolished the export and import of slaves. What they didn't stop was, all of the slaves that were already here in America. The generations upon generations of slaves that were born on American soil, making them natural born citizens, but they were denied that right. The sin and crime of that. Understand that. So while he is touting the glories of America, he's ignoring and downplaying the evil crimes of America that denied its own citizens, its own citizens their rights.
Is something we should be proud of. The moment that we started, that said that this was wrong and this is evil. Now, mind you, it wasn't a perfect history. It went through decades of ups and downs, and we went through a bloody civil war. But show me another country that sacrificed so much, brother.
And I would say again, America, this is not praiseworthy of America, since we never should have had slavery in the first place.
Against brother and father against son to accomplish something that what? The churches were screaming in the pews and the pulpits, and Thaddeus Stevens was inspired by a pastor to go to Congress and say, slavery is anti-American. Our founders said it. Thaddeus Stevens said it. We fought this bitter civil war, and Abraham Lincoln kept the republic together on this unionist idea that I think America's best days.
Now again, distortions, because it is true. Remember, all the founding fathers wrestled with the guilt of slavery. They knew it was wrong. They knew it was evil. But on the other hand, the slave was making us money. All right, the slave was making us money.
Fast forward all the way to Fredrick Douglass, where he says that we need to abolish slavery. Why? Because I'm so inspired by the Declaration of Independence. He was an abolitionist, a black Republican who understood it. Go all the way fast forward to the...
Okay. Now notice what he said about Fredrick Douglass. He said that Fredrick Douglass was inspired, right? He was inspired by the Declaration of Independence. Well, let's read Fredrick Douglass, his own words, okay? Let's read his own words. All right, now I'm not going to read all of this. As you can see, this is an extremely long address. This was, okay, this is, look how long this thing is. So we're not going to get into it, but what I wanted to just show you just how impactful this, look at it, look how long this thing is right here. Okay, look how long. I just want to show you all how long this is. So I believe, okay. All right, now what this is, let me go back up to the top, see how long this is. All right, so what this is notice he says on July 5th, 1852, Fredrick Douglass was invited to address the citizens of his hometown, Rochester, New York. Okay, now he was an escaped slave. Okay, remember that. So whatever the expectation of his audience on that 76th anniversary, the 76th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Douglass used the occasion not to celebrate the nation's triumph, but to remind all of its continuing enslavement, of millions of people. So this is his speech here, and I want to read just some excerpts. I'm going to find one of the again, this is so long, but I want you to read. Where am I at here? Okay, I'll get to it in a moment. But yeah. All right, I'm gonna come out of this because I can't find where I want to read here. Now he goes on. Okay, I'm gonna come out of this because there's a couple of the. All right, let me come out of this because this is okay. I'm gonna come out of this. There's a couple of, I got it down to some other statements here. Let me come out of this, and I'm gonna read this. Okay, I'm gonna read this one here. Now this is, again, I just took paragraphs, a couple of paragraphs to show you what he meant. You remember, Charlie, Mr. Charlie, talked about how that, I'm finding this here. All right, I'm still looking, guys. That's what I'm doing right here. All right. Anyway, remember how Charlie distorted Fredrick Douglass and said he actually lied on him. But this is just a snippet of what he said. He says, but such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Now I'm talking about the celebration of the 4th of July. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessing in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and inheritance bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. And by the way, Fredrick Douglass bore the marks of slavery, the whippings. He said, this 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilege, irony. Do you mean citizens to mock me by asking me to speak today? If so, there is a parallel to your conduct. And let me warn you that it is very dangerous to copy an example of a nation whose crimes, lowering up to heaven, were thrown down by the breath of the Almighty, burying that nation in coverable ruin. I can today take up a plaintive lament of appeal, and whose smitten people. Now, again, notice what he is saying right here. How would Charlie react to something like this, right? How would he act? How would he react to this? Now, remember, just like Charlie, right? Who's the distortion, and you hear some of the same arguments. How that people will say to me today that I should be proud to be an American. And notice what Fredrick Douglas is saying when they invited him to speak. And he spoke. Could you imagine how they thought? Here's another one. Standing there, identified with an American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether return to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. Now look at this, y'all. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Now, remember the lies that
Fast forward all the way to Fredrick Douglass, where he says that we need to abolish slavery. Why? Because I'm so inspired by the Declaration of Independence. He was an abolitionist, a black Republican who understood it. Go all the way fast forward to...
All right. Here's another one. Now, notice what he says there. Here's another one. What? He says, what to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass frontage impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons, your thanksgiving, with all your religious parades and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Now, isn't it interesting that you find certain people who will say How did America? Remember, Charlie himself says, no, 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 no. We're different. Remember when Charlie said how America worked feverishly? Well, Fredrick Douglass didn't think so. Here's another one. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotism of the world. Travel through South America, search out every abuse. And when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practice of this nation. And you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rivalry. Now, this is his take on America. Remember?
Fast forward all the way to Fredrick Douglass, where he says that we need to abolish slavery. Why? Because I'm so inspired by the Declaration of Independence. He was an abolitionist, a black Republican who understood it. Go all the way fast forward to
Now I'm going to get to Martin Luther King now. But again, is that what Fredrick Douglass thought? Now don't get me wrong. Just like a lot of slaves, like a lot of African Americans, they oftentimes said, please give us the written checks, the promissory note. I'll get to that in a moment. I'm jumping ahead. Let's go ahead now. This is I'm going to clip 11. I want you to listen to this now. This is Mr. Charlie.
all the way fast forward to the great Martin Luther King Jr., who himself lived a very, let's say, he had questionable moral decisions, but he was.
Now, I want to stop here, and I want you to note something. Now, we saw how he responded to Hannah Nicole. He talked about her appearance, right? He talked about how vile she was, how racist she was. And notice what he says about Martin Luther King. Now, why is this important for Mr. Charlie when he said he has very questionable moral choices? He's talking about the adultery of Martin Luther King. Now, why is he talking about that, though? Why is he bringing that up? In other words, it has no context, right? Now, he's going to try to clean it up, but watch this.
Great Martin Luther King Jr., who himself lived a very, let's say, he had questionable moral decisions, but he was arguing for what? A moral good. Why do I keep on saying this? Because people can act sinfully personally, but argue for something righteously publicly, and they should be remembered for what they did good publicly, not for what they did less than desirably privately. It's a very important.
Then why didn't he mention Thomas Jefferson? Why didn't he talk about the evils and the savagery of Thomas Jefferson or George Washington? Why did he bring up Martin Luther King? Because this man is a vile racist. And shame on this pastor. See, shame on this pastor for paying this man for this.
Thing. People say, well, we got to get rid of all these people, but dare you forget what they sacrificed for our country? And Martin Luther King said in that beautiful speech, I come here to cash in the check of the promissory note of the Declaration of Independence. Yes. He didn't say that this document was racist. He didn't say we got to shred it from its roots. He says this document says all men are created equal. And I'm telling you, Congress.
Okay, outright lie. Not only a distortion, but an outright lie. Let me read what Martin Luther King actually said during the 1963 I Have a Dream speech that he just lied on. This is Martin Luther King, 1963. He says, in a sense, we have come to our national capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, notice what Martin Luther King wrote, right? This is what Mr. Charlie has, this is what Mr. Charlie has just outright lied on. Right? This is just outright lie, but watch this. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, and as far as her citizens of color are concerned, instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we come here to cash this check, a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Here we are 48 years after that speech, and that check is still bouncing. Now, that's the person who wrote the check. Now, notice again that Mr. Charlie, again, in his lies and his distortion. And one of the issues is that, again, as even what Dr. King said here, yes, we are looking for freedom, a freedom that is continually denied, that we have to continually fight for. The problem with people like Charlie Kirk and white evangelicals is instead of, remember, Martin Luther King both said, we are claiming the promise of liberty, while at the same time condemning the injustice of this nation. Charlie Kirk is trying to deny the evils of white America. And as an apologetic to this American whiteness. And you see that the same spirit that we saw way back in Thomas Jefferson is still exists in people like Charlie Kirk, who would rather lie and distort the truth than to deal with really the truth of the matter, right? And shame on these churches, shame on these Christian churches, that in the name of God, and as I said, I always say, and I've come to the harsh reality, that the white evangelical movement, and we're talking about people like Charlie Kirk, people like Calvary Chapel, right? People that focus on the family, people like the Family Research Council. We can go on and on with these white conservatives. They're not about building the kingdom of God. They are about building a white Christian nation. That philosophy continues to fail. Charlie Kirk, while he makes money going from church to church, the philosophy fails. The philosophy fails. All right, guys, look. That is my perspective. I would be doing many more on this, but that is my perspective. Love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. Add them to the comments section. All comments are welcome. And don't forget to like and share this video, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Till next time, I'll see you then.